Hi, this is Dr. Todd. Thank you for joining us for an interesting conversation with Sarah LaFever, who spent about 20 years inside a cult and was able to escape and has spent the last several years rebuilding her life. And her story is really quite amazing. So, Sarah, thank you very much for joining the conversation today. I'm really happy to have you.
Thank you.
So, we've had a chance to have a conversation a bit, not only about your years in the cult, but also some of the stuff that happened during childhood. That was pretty difficult, right? I know you shared some of the things with, kind of the family life and some of the struggles that you had when you were younger. Just to give everybody out there just a little bit of a feel for what that experience was like growing up. Can you just share a bit about that?
Well, from a very young age, my mother became very terminally ill. So I spent, we started with a very abusive relationship, her second marriage with my sister's dad, and that just led to all of her life's traumas boiling down into her physical disease, and she ended up spending many years in the hospital and deathly ill, and that just caused a lot of instability for me and my sister. We were separated, sent to family homes, Christian homes, and believe it or not, the church families were the worst. they were the ones who were allowed to have other people's children, even though they had been in jail for murder before. So, yes.
What?
Yes, and that was, So one of the families that we lived with, we found out later after I had experienced some serious abuse that they had been in jail for murdering their first child, shaking them to death. Murder sounds serious, but it was, they shook them to death and then eventually got out of jail, paid their time, and then had 3 more children, were Christians, and were part of one of the families that took us a lot. And
wow,
learned a lot about how to keep my mouth shut, take the blame for other people, take the punishment that other people deserve. It was my calling because there I was unable to do anything about it.
So when you talked about some of the abuse that you experienced in some of these foster homes, I mean, was it like physical, emotional, sexual stuff?
Yeah, that particular family was mostly it was physical and sexual, or threat of sexual, or keep you in a vulnerable place so that you know that anything sexual could happen at any moment, like certain rules that they had about sleeping. You had to sleep with your underwear off and the door open, and you had to, it's like they had a rotation. This is like in the 80s, so people it wasn't like old time where you had to share bath water, but they had this rotation of who goes first taking a bath, and by the time I'd get in there, it was black and gross, and because I was the foster kid, or the one that wasn't part of the family. So I was I'm not bathing in there. So I would just sponge bath in the sink, and then I'd get a spanking for it, many spankings for it, till I was black and blue, because I bathed with the sink instead of the filthy water in the bathtub, stuff like that.
They had everyone in the family sharing the same bath water?
Yeah. On bath night, it was the oldest child, the next child, the next child. My sister, because she was little and cute and a baby. I don't remember if she actually had to take a bath. I don't remember. She was 2 and everybody adored her. And then, of course, I was the last one because, I was the other kid. So,
wow.
Yeah, so I grew up a lot feeling like I was never part of a family, because I was always part of somebody else's family, but I was also always the one that would just be sent away quickly. It's oh, well, we did our week with the church member's kid. So, now it's your turn. And so it was and then even I know my mother loved me, that was deeply ingrained. I know she loved me, there was never a question. But when she was ill and she would go home and try to, recover, she was still so weak and ill, because just she just was, that she would think she could take care of me. So then I'd be released from the foster home. And if it was any home at all, I would never go back to the same one. You don't go back, you go to another one. So I would go home because I was going home because she would think she could care for me. So I'd go home so she could, have her daughter there now because I was like 5 or something by then. And she would realize quickly that she wasn't really able to take care of me, the way she wanted to and the way she felt like I deserved as a child. And so she would put me back into a home. And, sometimes I didn't know if it was a foster home or a church home. Sometimes I could tell. But some people were just like, they treated me like they were like bitter that they had to take care of me. Like,
wow.
Or they would like, because I was the child that wasn't theirs, then they could like openly discuss whatever, like if I clogged the bathroom toilet, because I'm like, whatever, sorry, like nobody ever does that. The whole entire house and all of the guests had to hear how this child over here did that. What the fuck did you do? Did you have a big shit? Did you use, just like all the, and it was just like, and it was just, so it was like, I always felt like a burden.
Wow. That is brutal. So a couple things that really stuck out to me from what you just shared. One is, how could a family that was so abusive and actually had been convicted of killing a child by shaking it be allowed to accept foster children? And why would your mom...
It wasn't a foster family. It wasn't a foster family. It was a church family.
Oh,
so we would get bounced around.
So this was just kind of an unofficial...
Yes. So we were bounced around in the system and back and forth. So like if she thought it was just going to be like a couple nights or a week at the most, we'd go to a church family. But then once it was realized, oh no, like when she first started going to the hospital a lot, I remember we would get bounced. It's like lots of church families, like a week here, a week there. And it was like, and every time it was time to go, it was like, okay, we don't have time for you anymore. Like they would say things, now you need to go somewhere else. Like, you've extended your stay.
Wow.
We can't have her past a week. And I would always hear these adult conversations about, I've been there too long now, stuff like that. And I don't even know where my sister was during this whole time. I had no idea where she was. Just my mom's gone, don't know where. I guess she's in the hospital or something. And then we're just bounced around, I've extended my stay. I'm a burden. I'm too much, all the time. And
are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
I can't imagine being a little kid and listening to adults talking about how we've had her too much, she's a burden, it's time for her to go, and somebody else needs to take her. I just can't imagine what that experience must have felt like.
Like as an adult processing these things and trying to figure out like, why do I feel this way? Why do I view, why do I always feel like a burden in every situation? Because it takes away your confidence to give or to receive or to just engage with humans on certain levels, because you walk into a situation and you're instantly, I know I'm going to be too much. I know I'm going to be a burden. Anything I need or want is invalid. So it's like I've approached adult life that way, and, there's a lot of other things like not being allowed to have boundaries, not being allowed to be the one who can fall apart and cry because for whatever reason, I was the one who had to not have problems with anything. I wasn't allowed to have problems. I've learned that it's shaped how I've interacted with people and what I've, like, even the respect I've allowed for myself, because it's like, well, I'm the burden. I don't deserve love. I don't deserve gifts or care or, like, I have to be the only one to be in the relationship to be giving at all times. Otherwise, I'm a burden.
I understand that feeling. I understand that feeling. I mean, clearly I'm not in your head and I can't know what that's like for you, but I've experienced something very similar where there's just this sense that there's nothing innately valuable about me, that I'm more a burden to be managed for people rather than something to be celebrated and enjoyed. So tell me a little bit about the cult and how you found that and what it was, what drew you to being involved in the cult that you got involved in.
I don't know that I was like looking for a cult, but I did believe that when I found what I was looking for, it was going to be a group of people. They were going to all believe the same thing. They were going to be intent on one purpose together, and they were going to be like a family. That's what I felt like when I find that, that's where I will fulfill my purpose. And I met somebody who, through a set of circumstances, got me to Cape Cod, where 2 months later, I met the community. In essence, I was looking for them without knowing who I was looking for or what exactly, but at the same time, because of the things I'd been through from like my very first memory ever that I can recall, shaped my purpose, which was I wanted to create spaces that were safe, where children could have a family, where they could feel like they belonged. And even though like I knew my mom loved me, I still wanted to have a space where people could find themselves, explore themselves, be okay to be you. I mean,
because you never had that.
I like, even though I had a mom who loved me, I still didn't have what I needed to be me, because I don't know if it's my life's circumstances that shaped this crazy person that I am and the way that I view life, but like, I don't view life like most people. Like everything just seems so different, and everything just seems like it's on like a bigger scale. Like I see things differently.
You know, when you're talking about this desire for this sense of family, for this sense of community, for this safe space where children can be themselves, right? I mean, that is just something that you never had growing up. There was never a safe space to be you. Being just,
No.
you know, having people fight over who had to take you, right? Certainly didn't feel like you were welcome anywhere, or there was a sense of family. And with your mom's illness and not really having a relationship with your dad, and, you know, going from family to family and being bounced around and having not even being with your sister, you know, a lot of the time, there just would be this sense of, you know, of not having some of the fundamental things that we need as people, right? I mean, having this sense of, you know, kind of a home, a sense of, you know, a sense of place, a sense of belonging, a sense of being loved. So, you know, when people think about cults, right, they oftentimes think about, you know, not having the ability to have your own beliefs or have your own thoughts or have your own space and things like that. But that seemed like the very thing that you were seeking when joining the cult. But once you got in, what did you find as far as like your ability to really develop who you were as a person and all of that? What was that experience like for you?
Well, one of the things that was like, I guess you say their selling point for me was their whole mission was to, it was like you would find who you were created to be by just doing whatever you were told, but it wasn't presented that way. It was like, if you give your whole heart to whatever task you're asked to do, then that's how you'll find out if you're good at it. You know, so it's like you would start doing anything. Like, I mean, they had me grinding salt. They had me in the kitchen. I mean, they learned really fast. I suck in the kitchen. I will totally happily clean up after you and make it immaculate and sparkle, but cooking, no, hardly even like eating. So anyways, they put me in training, and so I got to learn how to teach, and that became obviously like my strength. So I was like known as a training teacher everywhere I went. They're like, oh great, a training teacher's coming. That's what we called homeschooling, because we homeschooled all of our children collectively. So it's like, I guess you could say like the promise that they gave you was that this is a space where you can be you and you'll be accepted even when you fall, because you can get back up. Because the whole point was like, Son of God forgives you of your sins. And so then there's every religion has their system of how you reach that forgiveness, and they had created their interpretation of how you're forgiven and how you're saved and how you get to escape death and, all of those parts. But what was different was they also interpreted the Bible differently in a way I had never seen in any of the other religions I had researched, because during my search, I researched everywhere. So like they actually believe that science, geology, and religion should support each other in facts, so like they didn't believe that the earth was created 6,000 years ago. They believe that there's room for, they said that there's a space between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. And that was a lot of time, So it's like, I never heard that before. The way they interpreted families was very different. And so when I first got there, I was just impressed by the families, the acceptance. Like they loved me. And like they accepted me, and they plugged me in immediately, and they could see my light, they could see my potential, they could see my shine, the second day I was there was somebody who else was a guest, and they wanted to use the bathroom, but the guest bathroom downstairs was full. And so they just said, oh, you just have to wait. And then they turned to me and whispered, it's okay, you're going to be here a while, you can go use the upstairs family bathroom. Like the second day I was there, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm like part of the family, and they were like, old school, they homeschooled, they had home births, they were, all natural, they were very health conscious, which coming from my background, I was like, oh yes, and I was 20 and in a total fantasy world and was thinking, oh yes, these people are serving God and they have a great purpose on this planet. So if there just won't even be time for getting sick. People don't get sick here. I was just like, people just don't have time. If I get sick, I just don't have time. I'll just keep going. I don't have time to die and go to the hospital and all this crazy stuff. So in my stupid little fantasy of a 20-year-old, I was like, I painted that picture for myself, which was totally wrong. I was very sick a lot of the times I was there and a lot of health issues, but not because of their life, just because of my body, And so anyways, that was it. But yeah, so when I joined them, I fell in love with the people. And honestly, like if you go to their yellow delis, the people are great. You can see why people would just be like, oh my gosh, I feel loved. I care. I mean, I don't know what they're like now, because I don't know if things have changed, but I know every time I've been there, it's like people, they love you. And they're taught to genuinely love you. Like they literally do not view people based on money. They don't. I mean, maybe the leaders who are trying to get jobs, maybe they look for business reasons, like who can help that. But as far as like in general, people had no monetary value. We weren't supposed to, but we didn't try to get someone to come in because they had resources. It was more like, are you a good fit? Do you want this? Do you want to give up everything to participate in this great and awesome purpose that we have? If not, that's fine. You're not going to be happy here. We don't care if you have a ton of resources and skill sets, and we want you, but you don't want to be here. We don't want you. You know what I mean? Like we don't, because we know we'll fall apart. I think at a certain time, some people probably changed, but in general, that was our motto. It's just how we lived. We were there to care for each other. Like we really were. And by caring for each other, and by just responding to, whatever the needs were around us, we were building something great, something that was putting an end to the selfishness that destroys humanity. That was our goal. We were going to make a better humanity, that's filled with the love of the creator, the forbearance, the forgiveness, the patience, the caring, all the things that are make a perfect human. We were creating that goal, and we had child training teachings that taught us how to do that. So by the third generation, we have this great, amazing, perfect generation equivalent to the Son of God in their perfection and, selflessness, So, but it literally was all about just dealing with the root of the problems of humanity right here first, not pointing. We weren't supposed to be pointing the finger, like there's a lot of, if you were caught pointing the finger, the question was like, oh, well, what's in you? Unless, of course, it was, so that was the basis. But then, of course, it's a twist. It's like the Twilight Zone, just like my whole life was like, I was very loved, but yet there's all this other crap, so it was very similar to that in the sense of, it's like, you knew you were loved. You knew you were giving your all. You knew you were cutting off the root of, suffering in humanity on a daily basis. And you were creating something better for your family, for everybody. And then nothing was my own. And yet I needed to be responsible for everything as though it were my own, because that's how we lived. Like, as soon as I got done being baptized, they brought me back to the house that I was staying in. They said, this is now your house. And you have houses all over the world. You have businesses all over the world. Everything became yours when you were there, meaning they will now send you anywhere that they need you, and it's your home or your industry. And so you would take ownership and responsibility as though it's yours, because it is. And oftentimes the person whose name is on the property, the business, the house, didn't even live there. Like our boat, it was registered to the person who lived in England. I don't even know if he ever stepped foot on the boat, before his name got put on it. Like, I don't know. Like, they basically just looked for whoever's name could legally apply to whatever it was that they were looking for.
So at some point, things really didn't go well in the cult, right? At some point, you started to see things or experience things that didn't feel right or didn't feel good. What did you start to notice? I mean, what were the things that you were experiencing in the cult where you were like, wait a minute, this is not a healthy place for me to be?
Yeah. Well, there's years where we noticed that the community itself was falling apart. You could say there's many, many locations where the leadership was just, they weren't really holding to the standards. Like,
is it abusive?
It's well, okay. The way that we structured everything, there was just structure, and there was ways that we kept our culture pure. And then when people started to kind of like wake up because of something that happened in their life, perhaps like the way they were being handled, all of a sudden they woke up and was like, wait, this is not what I can. So then you can start to see people, like, we called it falling away, but on this side of things, I'm looking at, it's like, no, that was more of the awakening, and it's like, so you'd start to see people going through this like awakening. And some people, what it would cause, there we would also call it the sifting, like when you throw the wheat up in the air and you sift out the chaff. So we called it the sifting. And so there'd be a time when people started awakening and seeing the community for what it was, and they'd start to speak. And that's when all of a sudden it's like, it's like people would start tearing them down and trying to twist what they were saying and make it sound like, oh, they have doubt and leprosy and don't listen to them. And all of a sudden they became like the spotlight of terror to our culture. And so then certain communities, like if they were in leadership, those locations would start to not keep the structure. And so then everybody would start to fall apart. Things weren't happening properly. People were getting hurt and nobody was standing up for them. And so specifically, so there's a location where we felt that was happening very strongly. And it was like we were losing all of our traditions, all of our core. And a lot of things happened there. But that's when I really started to open my eyes, started noticing, like, wait a minute. the Spirit of God is not here. Like that spirit the energy that drew me here, that made me believe that this was what it said it was, that I could put my whole soul into supporting and growing this. It felt like it wasn't where I was in that location. And so I was like, well, I still want to believe that everything I've been investing in is real. So it's just not here. So I'm going to keep making this environment as best as I can and keep investing to get it back to what it's meant to be. And eventually we closed that place down. It's now reopened, but under different management. So that started happening probably around the time I had my fourth child. I just started, like, my awakening started, but I was still wanting to hold on to what I believed I'd been building, because I was building a future for my children. You know what I mean? Like, I had gone from when I walked in the door wearing boy boxers, okay, and, military issue jump boots, walking in there and then being feminized to complete submission, to where even if I had an idea for, something nice to do with my husband, I was taking control and I wasn't allowed. I had to leave it to him. And he was, it's not like, whatever the point being is, like, I would be ridiculed for doing that, and so it's like I had to really be retrained and rewired and redesign myself from the person I was, which I was still a teenager. I needed to redesign my adult life, but I had to redesign it to fit there. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing it falling apart. And I'm like, everything I believed, everything I've built for my children, everything I've built for humanity, everything is falling apart if we as a people fall apart.
What was the moment that made you decide that it was time for you to go?
I got to go.
Yeah.
The moment that I made that decision was, okay, so my husband there was always, I think he was bipolar. So he had that tendency, but he was manipulative and abusive emotionally, mentally, psychologically, and all of that. But he never laid a hand on me. But I knew when I got married, if we were out here, there'd be no restraint and he would physically hurt me. I just could tell. Turns out he had abused his previous girlfriends before the community. So I was not wrong in judging that. But there, I felt safe. And so that is when it really woke me up, because he and I were having a conversation for like an hour. I was just being the good wife, listening to him, supporting whatever he was saying. He was complaining about the leaders and this and that. And I'm just like hearing about it all the time. He's always complaining, but doing my job. And then when he was done, I was like, okay, can I go and do my training planning now? I have to go to the barn and do my job. Basically. So of course I said it a little different. And he's like, yes. So he released me. I went there, not knowing he was chasing me. And I go in there, I go upstairs, and all of a sudden he turns me around and I'm looking right at him. He chased me through the barn, like across the property, through the barn, didn't know it, and then turned me around and grabbed my shoulder and started shaking me. No bruises, nothing. But at that moment, I freaked out and he wouldn't let me leave. There was one exit. It was behind him, and he would not let me pass. He took his hands off me, but he wouldn't let me pass. And I was just like, all of a sudden, all my childhood traumas started, coming up. And then, so I went downstairs, and we always had at least a boy over 16. Like, we were never unprotected as women, you could say. This is the culture. There's always a man there. It was the one time in my entire life there was not one man or boy child, not even a child that was male on the property. And I was like everybody's like, they just disappeared. And I'm running downstairs looking for a man for help. I couldn't find anybody, so I found a woman. And I told her what was happening, and she turned to me, she goes, well, what did you do to provoke him?
Wow.
And I was just like, what? And so then for the next year, everything just got really weird for me. Like, he was chasing me while I'm carrying my child, which was major flashbacks from when I was a child. My mother was, running with me and running away from my sister's dad. So I'm just like living in PTSD while living in the present, and nothing is looked at like mental health. So it's like, I'm crazy. I'm a rebellious woman all of a sudden, and every time that I would and so then I would go and tell somebody, can I get help? Can I go sleep at a different house? Can I sleep in the barn? Can I anywhere? Can you just help me? That it was always like, no, you need to be a good wife. You need to really submit to him. And then they're like, and I was like, can I leave when I feel unsafe? No, you can't. You need to stay there and listen to what he has to say. And then finally, I was just so then I'd make sure that if he was chasing me, I'd run into a room that had a bunch of people. And so I did that one time. And it backfired. All of a sudden, it was my fault for causing a scene. Okay, so one of the structures there that held us all together was if there was any rift between two people, and it was time to come to the gatherings, but we gathered morning and evening. If there was a rift, you would come as a woman uncovered, and as a man, you wouldn't wear your diadem. We wouldn't lift our hands. We wouldn't pretend we were in unity with everyone. So technically, during this time, I should have, we as a couple should have been not connected. I should have been wearing the signs that we're not doing well. But he was always so ashamed that to him, you had to look good, even though we were in a freaking community. You know what I mean? And so he would not. So we would go there and we would look like we were connected. He still wanted us to pretend. And I would go into the leader in the morning. I was like, did you see what happened today? And then he goes, why are you all wearing your head covering and diadem? And I'm looking at him like, help, please help. And then he would just look at my husband. My husband would say something. And he would just look at me like, I don't understand what's going on. I'm magically conjuring up some sorcery or something that's confusing this image that we're seeing. And it was just weird, and it was I started feeling like I was living in the Twilight Zone because people would say one thing and then do the opposite. And it just got really, even my ex-husband was he'd be turning on me and then go to the Minha and speak these amazing revelations about his inner self. And I'm like, but anyways, and then everyone was believing him and thinking I was crazy. And then finally he did attack me, actually jumped on top of me and shook me, poked my daughter in the eye. She still remembers that. Didn't hurt her, but it was traumatizing. And she goes, I remember you poked me in the eye. And I was like, good, remember that always. Anyways, and then he jumped on top of me and I said, if you touch me, I'm going to scream. So of course he went to cover my mouth and I was screaming and my daughter came in. My older daughter came in and pulled him off of me. But because I screamed at just the right time, it made the leaders have to do something. So they sent him away, which I don't agree with how they did that either. But anyway, so during that season was when I was really looking at how we were being treated, how the community was handling the situation, and was just realizing this place is not safe. And they are trying to turn everything on me as though I am the culprit, but everybody knew, everybody could tell you he was intense. Women were afraid of him. People didn't come to us and tell me things about my family because they were afraid of him. You know what I mean? So it was it wasn't me making up crap. They knew this about him. And they tried to frame me for something I never did, which was having an affair, which never happened. It was with a 40-year-old virgin type person, I mean, seriously, we're never even in the same side of the room together, but they just looking for something so that I could be accused. And so then they made up this whole thing, made it bigger than it was, and then used it as bribery to get me to forgive my husband and let him come back. And I was like, I forgive him. I just don't want to be around him. I don't feel comfortable. I want my space. I don't want, and that wasn't good enough because, I'm a woman. They can't have a woman making those kinds of decisions. And and also our family was going to be a better workhorse if we were working together as a team. So they had to get him back. So they brought him back and they said, if you don't accept him back, then we're going to take your children away one at a time. And so I did what was best for the family and I took him back. But then and then there's a space in the Bible. There's a space in the Bible because, we believe in the Bible that says, if a couple needs to take time for themselves and not be sexually interactive, they can do that for the sake of like, seeking God better and stuff like that. And so I showed him that verse. I was like, we just went through a lot. Can we please take time away and not have to touch each other? Like, I need this space. I was like, I really need to evaluate myself. We've been through a lot. And he was like, sure. The very next day he goes, are we still doing this? Like, how long do I have to wait? And it was just like, I felt like I never even was given space to do that, and which made it where I wanted him even less, and I didn't want to be naked with him. I wanted to go like change in the closet. I would rather sleep under the bed anywhere, and so we didn't do well when he came back, obviously, and I just kept coming up with some reason to not have sex with him, and they were going to send me away for that reason. And so it took me like 1.5 years to find somebody who, like a family member who had room for any of us at all. And so then my sister finally was able to take us, but I couldn't take everybody. So it was kind of like, the story is like, there's a flood and, you're going to drown, and it's like, you can only save one child. And so you hope that the others know how to swim. And so I took the 2 that I knew could not swim and I took those 2 and left notes and phone numbers to the other 3. And we managed to escape. And then while we were escaping, their Abba realized I was gone and and went digging through their stuff and got their letters with their phone numbers before they even got back to their room. So found out later my children never had my number.
Wow. So tell me about the actual escape. Tell me about like that event. How did you actually get out of there?
Well, my first plan was to pack 2 duffel bags full of in stuff to feed my kids, like food and anything. And I realized, wait, none of this is like Insta food. We don't have Insta food. We have to cook everything. So I was like, so what good is like dry rice and beans gonna do me? So then I would unpack my bags, put the food all back, and then finally, like the day of, the whole time I was planning to escape, in order to communicate, I had already been restricted in my movement and communication to where I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody. And I wasn't allowed out of the house without permission and going somewhere for very specific. And we had 3 of those, 3 just landline phones, but they were portable. So they were, so I had to find all 3 of them, take out the batteries, hide them in my drawer. And then when I was ready to call my sister to, communicate and try to get help, then I only had 1 phone. And that way because I had somebody actually pick up the phone and listen to my conversation. And that's how I ended up getting locked up for a week in my room. Anyways, and so in order to get out, I had to hide these phones. And then when somebody came looking for us, I only had 1 phone, and then I would keep the others. And then sometimes somebody would figure out that they needed them. So then I'd have to go put them back and then go hide them again. And you had to go find them. They weren't just on the stand. You had to go door to door to ask people, hey, you got a phone? So you had to be obvious you were looking for a phone when I'm not supposed to have a phone. You know what I mean? So it was very challenging to get these phones and then hide them. So anyway, so that was how I managed to do my communicating. But then the actual day to get out, I wasn't able to carry anything with me because I was supposed to do lunch that day. And this one lady just happened to be super freaking nosy and just kept checking on me. And I'm just fuck. So finally, in order to get out, what I did is I dressed but me and my 2 youngest daughters in 2 outfits, and then put a hoodie around our waist and on our body, and then our winter coat. And then I had 2 backpacks, and I knew my youngest was probably going to start, wetting the bed from the change of life. And so I had 2 all-in-one cloth diapers still, and I put those in the bag. And then I just had our hygiene things and our identities, important papers, and just the bare essentials. So I had 2 backpacks, and because the little one couldn't carry a backpack. So my I had a 4-year-old that I was taking with me and a 7-year-old that I was taking with me. And so the 7-year-old carried a backpack and I carried a backpack. And we managed to sneak by the house and get past the nosy lady at one moment because she was like taking kids to the bathroom or something. So and then we ran up the hill. Like it was, I don't know, maybe a half a mile away to this old abandoned church. And we just stayed behind there and I kept peeking out until I saw my sister. And as we were driving away, I saw my ex-husband, husband at the time, walking up the Ashbury Church Road behind us. And he like just missed us. That was the escape. And then we got out. And then that night we went immediately into this whole church, like Thanksgiving candlelight service, which that whole experience was wild because I'm going from a cult into a Baptist family because my sister's a preacher's wife. So we went to live in the parish with her and they're some form of Baptist, but that was actually worse than the cult itself in a certain way. Cause like we were ostracized to the basement because my children called me Ema and she didn't want her children. She treated me like I was some demon that brought in like cult stuff into her family. Like when I would get to use the computer, I noticed in the browser history, there's all this like how to deprogram somebody. And she's like constantly having like these family meetings with just me after the children went to bed to like try to like, I don't know, convert me to Jesus again or something. And she was like trying to help me get my life together, but forcing me to wear makeup and well, here, at least it's organic. And then making me feel bad when she paid for anything, like just, this is a very expensive mascara. I'm like, I didn't want mascara, and it's just like, she's like, this is expensive to take care of you. And like, so when I got my tax return, I was like, I sent her like, I don't know, to me, $500 was a lot at that time. So I sent her $500. I was like, all right, it's all I have, but when I got food stamps, I used them like they used them, like, I don't know. Wow. It was just like, I literally was about ready to go live in a woman's shelter instead with my children. I was like, can I just go live in a woman's shelter? This is bad.
So what has been the biggest challenge after spending, I mean, you spent like 20 years in the cult or something 20. Like that. Yeah.
Yeah. The entire formative years of my adulthood.
and that came on the heels of, growing up with all of the disruption and, being moved around from home to home, never feeling like you belonged, never feeling like you really were safe. And then there's this whole, cult experience, and now you're getting out of that. And what has been kind of the biggest challenge for you? I mean, you got out, 7 years ago? Something like that? 5 years ago? 8 years ago?
Eight now. Yep.
This is still fairly fresh. I mean, it's not like you got out 20 years ago, right? I mean, what has been the biggest challenge that you have had to deal with getting out of there and trying to kind of establish yourself in a kind of the normal adult world, so to speak?
So during that year and a half before I left, I was planning how I was going to hit the ground running based on everything I knew from the 90s, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get this kind of job. I'm going to invest this way. I'm going to, just all the little things and steps so that I could be successful and I could come back and get the rest of my children. Like I was planning and like be successful within a year, and my first challenge was getting a job because nobody had a paper application. And when I would go in person, it's like, oh yeah, go fill it out online. Okay, so now I need to figure out that. So then resume, what have I done with my life that is worth you paying me for? Because remember, for 20 years, nothing, no human had a dollar value. No labor had a dollar value. Everything was for the purpose of, we are building this together. Everything is for that cause. Nothing was worth more than anything else. It didn't matter if you were a crew head or you were washing the dishes, you equally mattered. You know what I mean? And also it's like you show up, there's jobs. There's just something to do. You never felt like you didn't have something to contribute. Like even when I had major health problems and I couldn't do the typical things that people were doing, I found things that created value so that I could still function.
Well, still in the cult.
And, this all in the cult. Yeah. And, so then when coming out, it was just like, well, what does this employer want? What can I say that I've done? So my first application, it was like, I've been a stay-home mom and you worked on a farm. And like, it was just like this really like hippie type application. And I think the person really only called me in because he was just like, who is this person? I've never seen anything like this. Like, I literally think that's why they called me in, because they already had somebody for the position. I found out later. And I was like, okay. But anyways, it was like, that was the hardest. That's been one of the challenges, is me learning how to communicate my life's experiences in a way that gets me employment. That also is enough to sustain my family, because I have all my kids now. Like, I have all my children, 2 of them have jobs and careers, but they still need some help. And then all the rest I still fund. So, so that's been a huge challenge, is the communicating. Obviously, people are older. We are challenged to understand what are the latest trends. What are these words children are using these days, But for me, when I first came out, it was even like I would try to fit in or at least be present, and people would start talking about something. I'm like, oh, what show or movie is that? That's an app. Oh, app. Yeah. Okay. And then they'd be talking about, oh, what app is that? That's a game. That's like a PS4 or and I'm like, yeah. Okay. It's like, I literally felt like I came from Mars. Like, there's a movie when I was a kid about this family. They're walking through the woods, and the older child, who was like 4 years older than the younger one, wandered off, got picked up by a spaceship, goes up, gets dropped off. He's still the same age, but life has moved on 20 years. His younger brother is now older than him. Everybody's been wondering where he's at, and life had changed. Like, he could not comprehend what life was like. He ended up going back in the UFO and going back up in outer space because it worked better for him. You know what I mean? And so that's what it felt like when I came out here. I felt like I had been gone for 20 essential years of human development and cultural, development and evolving. And I was like, what can I do? How do I get a job? Like, how to explain myself. A lot of that. And then learning how to read people. Like, you have to read people differently in the cult. You have to, you read people in the cult more like you do it in an abusive family, where you're just trying to see, like, okay, who's coming at me and where are they coming from? What mindset are they in when they're talking to me? I need to understand what they're really trying to say, what just happened before they came and talked to me, so that I understand where I fit into this. It's just like, you had so much reading people out here. I had no idea. Yeah, like I had no idea. Like, and it was just like, what do I need to understand before a person's talking to me? Like, what about that person do I need to understand? It's very different than in the cult. I had to protect myself in a different way. Out here, it was just like, I felt very vulnerable. I felt like I didn't know anything. I felt like people were going to take advantage of me, which they did. I did get taken advantage of quite a bit. I felt like lost and determined at the same time. One thing I ran into was with men. It's like, I thought, I'm into men, so I go on Tinder just to find out how to relate, because I knew that the woman I was there couldn't relate to the men out here, because I wasn't about to be in the same situation. So I had to figure out, what are men looking for out here? If I want to date, how to communicate. So I'd go on Tinder, I'd post a photo. Sometimes it'd be, very, very, like girl next door. Sometimes it'd be spicy. Sometimes it'd be provocative. It was just like, what gets what attention? What kind of people talk to me when I present different ways? What kind of engagement do I get? Learning how to read people. Tinder was just like a video game. I met one person one time just to see if I could, like, is this something I want to do? So, like, everything I did from the time I came out was evaluating for myself. Is this who I want to be? Is this something I feel comfortable doing? Is this something I feel comfortable being? I got into modeling and I had to evaluate how much of this is okay. How much of it takes away from my children, or is this a me thing? Is it okay to do something for me? I got to a point where I was like, yeah, I can't do anything unless I'm making money because I'm the only person taking care of my kids. So if it doesn't make me money, I can't do it. So I got to that point at a certain, level, and I was like, okay, I need to learn how to invest in passive income then so I can be making money all the time. So started down that road, but I've always been determined. And so I think that really just helped. I've also, I don't know, it's like when I make a decision, it's sink or swim, and I don't sink. I might, doggy paddle for a little bit, trying to catch my breath and see the scenery and try to figure out what's my next move. But when I left, I knew I wasn't going back, but I also left myself personal space to decide that once I got out. I made decisions before I left, such as do not incur any debt whatsoever at all. So that if I decide to go back, I didn't have to worry about somebody else paying it off. So there was little things like that I made decisions about. And so I didn't. But when I did buy a house, there's some debt. And it's a mortgage. But so when I bought my house, I knew long before I bought the house that I was never, ever going back. There was nothing. Because there was a certain point where I was like, well, I will build my wealth. And then if I go back, I will bring it back with me, because I needed to allow space for myself to make those final decisions when I was away from there, because I'd been there for so long. It had shaped who I was. It had redesigned it had shaped my adult character. Like people are forming their adult personality in their 20s. I was there for my 20s and my 30s. I had a whole marriage. I had all my children there. I didn't really know who I was anymore, but I knew I was that person. I knew that person very well, but I needed to know, who am I now? And then I think too, one of the huge, mind-blowing awakenings for me of what I had embarked on out here was the first time one of my children was foolish. And foolish just means you're cracking a joke. You're being funny. You're being a freaking kid, hey, look at that silly thing. The first time one of my children was foolish, which didn't take long, I had to stop and evaluate, what do my children need to be disciplined for? Because in the cult, you discipline on the first command. You were foolish. We were raising future rulers of the universe, the people who were going to, spread all of God's loving character through all the universe. We were, and so my children were raised being told they're princes. You're a ruler. A prince doesn't drink tea with his spoon. He holds his cup like this. A ruler washes their dish and someone else's. It's like a lot of leadership qualities were instilled in my children because they were the future rulers of the universe amongst all the others, not themselves alone. So it's like you train them to behave as a king or a queen or their intended role. And so then all of a sudden it was like, wait, I want my children to experience childhood. I want them to, so then I had to evaluate, what is wrong? What is right? What is okay to let slide while I'm figuring it out? Because there's a huge, you don't let anything slide there. If you let something slide, you're not a ruler. You're not connected to the Holy Spirit, because if you were, you wouldn't miss a beat. The devil doesn't miss a beat. You should miss a beat. You're a parent and a teacher and this and that, but you can't miss a beat, or, take your fucking head covering off. You're not here, whatever. Are you even with us? It's like so much pressure. And, so then all of a sudden it was like, wait, I want my children to experience childhood. I want them to, experience childhood. I want them to, let slide while I'm figuring it out. Because there's a huge, so it's like reevaluating all of that. And then I had to go through my own personal things. Like, who am I? Like going from being so prudish to modeling. And is it okay to be beautiful? Is it okay to want to see myself as beautiful? Is it okay to admire my beauty? Do I have beauty? It's like I had to, because like even now, like I have mirrors everywhere. I look at my ass in the mirror all the freaking time. If I look good, I'm looking at myself. But I get to, and I don't shame myself for it, because even when I had babies in the cult and I would like be working really hard to like lose that baby weight right away. And my ex-husband, he like, I don't know, he looked like he was 9 months pregnant before I was 9 months pregnant, my first, and he still hasn't had a baby. I don't know. It's still there, growing, and so he would pick on me, like, don't eat so many carbs, don't eat bread, meanwhile he's eating 2 desserts and he's not nursing a baby. And, so I'm putting a lot of effort into, for myself, for my own health, but just to get some sort of, yeah, you're doing the right thing even, or I don't know, just not being picked on, and it's like, and then he would just, I don't know. So I never, and then I would just be like, hey, how do I look? I feel like the exercises are working. And he'd be like, it's the vanity of women to, care about their looks, and it's the downfall. And I'm like,
oh my God.
So I can't care about my body, but I can't not care about my body. And it doesn't matter. You can go have 2 desserts.
That's so crazy.
And then when I did get thin and I ate a sweet roll, he was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if you get big again? Like,
wow.
Really? Like, okay, so yeah, I have no shame in being a model and loving how I look. It's like, it's my body. My choice, I look, So, but yeah, so, I had to go through a lot of that, but that's been probably the hugest. It's definitely transformative, but very eye-opening too, because during my process of like literally asking every single thing that I do and that I think and that I feel, I've questioned why. Where does this come from? How does it apply now? How many ways can I look at this before I make my decision? And it's just like, it's totally overthinking. It's totally overanalytical, but it is what has helped me stay sane, because coming from that into this world is very earth-shattering. It's life-shattering. It's personality-shattering. It's established safety shattering. Like, you are not safe. You cannot go up to any human out here and assume they are safe. You just cannot. You cannot assume that they're not out to get something from you or that they're going to take advantage of you. It's just out here, you have to learn how to look beyond the person, because everybody's fake. Everybody. And that is one thing for me that it was like part of the promise there was you could be authentic. You could be your authentic self and be accepted. And so out here, it's like, it's not that way with everybody, but that is how you have to approach it. Otherwise, you're going to get suckered in, hurt, kidnapped, like coming from a cult. Here I'm saying this. Watch out for the people out here, They might love you and give you poison. Hey, you go to a bar, you can get roofied. I never got roofied in the cult. I drank their mate. I drank their Kool-Aid. I drank their tea. I was never freaking roofied, okay? I may have been like subtly marriage raped, kind of a thing like that, but just from a whiny freaking husband. But I was never actually like officially raped. There are people who have had other issues there, but in a bar here, I'm nervous about my cup. I might get roofied, so there's certain safety factors that you're not trained for before you leave. And they do that on purpose. They don't teach you finances. They don't teach you anything that you need to survive. And even when I did do bookkeeping there, trying to do bookkeeping for a freaking community, people who don't value money because money means nothing. So it's very different out here, And
wow.
then even how like people return favors, it's different out here. It's like you can do things because you love, but there it's like your back is going to be covered. It's like I could give everything of myself there and know that my needs will be met in a certain way. I might have to, beg, borrow, and feel like trash for asking, but I'll get my toothpaste, I'll get my clothes, I'll get my food, my rent is paid for. It's like,
out here, it's not the same thing.
No, you got to be everything out here. You got to be the breadwinner, the emotional support, your own therapist, your own bodyguard. It's just different. And your nervous system isn't designed for that.
So one of the things that is just really amazing, Sarah, is just the level of courage that it took to come out of that cult, and with 2 kids and really nothing, just go out into the real world and try to figure it out. I mean, it's like jumping out of an airplane and having to figure out how to build a parachute on your way down, right? And the fact that the fact that you've been able to pull it off, and and you've continued to grow and prosper and heal and develop is really quite amazing, and really speaks to your level of courage and your willingness just to be open and learn and just never give up. And what I would like to do just in these last few minutes is just kind of open it up to let you say whatever you would want to say that we haven't talked about yet. I mean, what are kind of some final thoughts that you'd like to share with everybody?
I think it's important to know that no matter what you go through in life, if you use it as a tool, a stepping stone, and a learning lesson, then you can view life through a totally different perspective that will open your horizons rather than close them. But I think like if I had held on to the abuse in my perspective, like there's people who have left who they handled it very differently. I think any kind of trauma that we go through, it's just important to keep asking yourself questions all along the way. Like, how does this make me feel? Because you need to give yourself room to just love yourself, no matter what you've been through. It's not your fault. And use it as your strength, because one of the things that I learned at a very young age, through much pain, was there's people who wanted to hurt me. And I took that pain, and we're not going to go down this rabbit hole conversation, but I formed a way of turning that into pleasure in a way that I could look them in the eye and take away their power, because they intended to hurt me, and I turned my pain into pleasure and strength, and they had no more power over me. There was nothing left they could do. And that is honestly where I have found my power, is by taking the things that meant to rob me of my agency and rob me of my freedom and what I'm here to do in my lifetime, whether it's decided beforehand or whether I decided it myself. Nothing is a barrier. A mountain can be moved as long as you find the right tool. Can't go over it, can't go around it, you can't go under it. Get some dynamite and blow a hole through it. Like, I will move any fucking mountain that's in front of me. And I'm at the place in my life now where I've moved so many mountains, I know I can move mountain ranges, and that's literally where I'm at in my life now. I've taken everything I've been through, and I've been creating teams and communities and homes and spaces for many different types of groups of people, that just, they know that they can be themselves when they're around me and in whatever spaces I create.
Man.
And
That's, I mean, you're truly an inspirational woman. I mean, the things that you've gone through, and you're just such a delightful, likable person, you know, and to have gone through everything that you have, and just having the strength and the courage and the tenacity just to keep blowing holes in those mountains, right? And turning, you know, I really like the way that you talked about how, you know, the people who tried to hurt you, being able to redirect that so that, you know, their words and their deeds don't eviscerate you, don't break you, but rather using that, just turning that around and just kind of projecting that back on them so that the people who want to wound don't have the power to really, you know, I mean, of course it's, you know, things that people say and things that people do can be disappointing and hurtful, but at a certain point there's the, you know, the ability to kind of turn that around and project that back out so that you can keep moving forward. And man, I mean, you've just got such a powerful story. I really, really appreciate you you being vulnerable and opening up and sharing everything. So thank you very much for being here, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.